Welcome back to another Blacktastic episode of the People Before Politics show, Sunday Rundown, powered by Black Westchester Magazine. I'm your host, Damon K. Jones, joined by my brother, A.J. Woodson, and bringing that fresh perspective, Larnaz Kinsey. Every Sunday, we pull back the curtain on the issues shaping our families, our cities, and our future, from health and safety to policy and power. It's because our mission is simple. Put the people first, not the politics. It's going to be Blacktastic.
Wait, I can hardly hear you.
Who, me?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you clear.
Can you hear me now? So I'm going to let Damon introduce our next brother who's on here in the next segment we're going to do. And again, if you just tuned in, you are watching Black Westchester Presents, the People Before Politics radio show. We simulcast live every Sunday, 6 to 8 on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, X, and on blackwestchester.com and anywhere else they allow us to stream. So go ahead, David, take it away.
Yes, I want to introduce the next guest. This is my brother. We always talking, and I'm glad he's able to even get in, even in the car, man, because we wanted to talk. I couldn't think of no better pastor to have the conversation about what happened with Don Lemon in the church. I said, let me reach out to Brother Conrad so we can get some real truth to what's going on. And I want to welcome my brother once again, a friend of the show, Pastor Conrad Tillard. Welcome, brother. Welcome.
It's great to be here with you and Brother AJ, and I continue to be a fan of not only the show, the newspaper. You all are something like me. You don't mind telling the truth. And listen, and your stuff is actually interesting. The problem with saying what everybody else says and the orthodoxy is that it just really isn't very interesting. So I appreciate the nuance that Black Westchester brings to the table.
And this is it's our new addition, Larnaz. I don't think you met her the last few times. She just came. She's been a great addition to the Black Westchester family.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Our new addition, Larnaz Kinsley. She's been a great addition to the Black Westchester family.
Did we freeze?
No, can you hear me?
Can you hear us?
I can, but just sparingly. Yeah, I can hear you now.
We got a new addition, new host to the show, Larnaz Kinsley. This is your first time on the show with her. So she brings a little different flavor, different questions,
all right.
Different
all
outlook
right.
to what's going on. But brother, like we talked for a hot second, and I'm like, man, you gotta come on the show Sunday about what is your thought as a pastor of a church,
right?
Being in the ministry as long as you've been in the ministry,
right.
What was your thought about the actions of this, not Don Lemon, but the protesters and interrupting a sanctuary, no matter what color it is, just interrupting a sanctuary?
Right. Of course, I was outraged, and I was outraged for a number of reasons. Number one, I was outraged because one of the most important founding principles of the United States of America was the principle of freedom of religion, freedom of assembly. And when, in Europe, when the Catholic Church ruled, and then later the Church of England, the people who came to the United States could not worship the way they wanted to. In fact, they had to worship the way the state said they had to worship. The church, the crown, the king, and the pope, or they were married. There was a marriage between the cross and the crown. So you only had an official church, and that church had power over people. If they declared you a heretic in that day, you could be sentenced to death just by your pastor, okay, and your theology. And so the principle of freedom of religion, freedom of assembly is a very sacrosanct principle in the United States. And in fact, I was also outraged because when the Ku Klux Klan and the brutes in the South invaded our churches and sanctuaries, burned them down, or even as late as Dylan Roof, killing people in the sanctuary, that was not only a violation of the Constitution, that was not only breaking the law, but that was breaking the moral law. And so when I saw these people going to church, many of them misguided, progressive Christians, I said to myself, no person that fears God or has a real sincere relationship with God could even fix their mind to go into someone else's worship service and desecrate it. I would not do that to a Hindu, a Buddhist, a Jewish temple, a Muslim mosque. And so those who are justifying it or trying to justify it, because apparently the man was one of the ministers worked for ICE. Well, ministers, there are ministers who molested children that they don't disrupt their churches.
Exactly. Go ahead, brother.
I mean, the KKK. And what I'm saying is, many of these people are following godless leftists, godless progressives that really don't have any reverence for religion. And so I wanted to call it out. I'm a pastor. I would never approve of that, nor would I be weak in my condemnation of it, because it's just wrong.
Absolutely. And I just wanted to say,
Am I still with you?
Yeah, you
Yeah,
still
we can hear you, but we can't see you.
We can't see you, but we can
Okay,
hear
let me. I don't know what happened.
There we go.
But that
There
was
we go.
my position, and I was very upset because, first of all, if all of the great leaders that we've had, and no matter what a person feels about ICE, this is not the most existential threat that we face. Dr. Martin Luther King and even those before him, they didn't go into Bull Connor's church and disrupt that service. And
Right.
so if Dr. King didn't do it, and Malcolm didn't advocate it, and John Lewis didn't do it, and Abernathy and Hosea Williams and Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth didn't do it, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad didn't do it. If none of the greats did it, why would I follow Don Lemon to start doing something that's never been done before in the Black struggle?
Right.
And I just wanted to say real quick, Damon, and for Black
And so
people,
I just wanted to point out, when Yusuf Hawkins was killed in Bensonhurst, those boys, all of them were members of Catholic churches. We went to the streets in Bensonhurst, but we never went into those churches to disrupt those worship services. That's an indecent act. I don't care how you can't justify it. As I said, ministers have done horrific things. And once you start down that road, I was saying to some of my progressive friends who are celebrating it because he happens to be a white conservative theologian, okay? And I don't even know the man, I don't know the church. But there are a lot of liberal and progressive churches that promote same-sex marriage. They have ordained homosexual members of the clergy. They have rainbow flags. How would they feel if someone who was a religious conservative said this is ungodly? It's an abomination. We're going to disrupt your worship service. How would they feel? What would their response be? And I think we all know the answer.
Right.
absolutely. And for Black people, for any Black people who condone
So
that,
that's my position.
Oh, I don't think. Hey, Conrad, can you hear us?
I can hear you well. Can you hear me?
yeah, can you
Yeah.
hear me?
I can hear you. Yes. Did you
Okay.
hear what I just said?
I heard everything you said, and what I was saying on top of that. For Black people to condone that, I remind them. Remember back when Julianne?
Did you hear what I just said?
Yes.
Oh.
You can't hear us.
Maybe he can't hear you, AJ. AJ, you gotta speak up because maybe he can't hear you.
So I was talking about
Yeah,
when
I didn't hear.
when Giuliani had the
I can
cops
hear
run
you,
up-
Damon. I can't hear AJ at all.
Well, then you might have to repeat what I'm saying, Damon. When Giuliani had them cops run up in the mosque, Black people was upset.
Were you able to hear my last answer?
Yes.
Oh, I got it, AJ. When Giuliani let people run up in the mosque,
Right.
A lot of people was upset, but the police caught a different story in the mosque.
Yes, they did, and they did because they did because that was the response in 1994 and in 1972 of the Nation of Islam that they would not allow we would not allow anyone to desecrate our worship service. Now that was a miscommunication between the police and the mosque. Someone had called in a false report, but if you remember the point the brothers were making to the police, you can't come in here with weapons.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And so the point is the mosque and later the police officers were deemed wrong because they weren't supposed to come to a sacred space and come and barge in like that. And they were supposed to call a supervisor because a sacred worship place is something that we all should revere and respect. And so, the churches, many of them are becoming increasingly security conscious, but it's just wrong. And as I said, if some conservatives or religious fundamentalists had attacked Riverside Church or some of these liberal churches based upon their theology, they would scream bloody murder. And so it's not right. It's not justified. And it's just heartbreaking to me that so many black people are trying to justify it.
Right.
Now,
And that was the point,
now,
David, what I
Brother
wanted to say.
Conrad,
That any black people,
And it all goes to the fact that they are so irrational. Yes.
the point was any black people that justify
Are you
that.
not able to hear me?
Yes. We
You
didn't
can't.
justify that, so we shouldn't justify this. And that's the point. I wanted Damon if we could.
he said we couldn't justify. We couldn't justify
not
that.
able to hear me?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
I
Brother
can hear
Conrad.
you well. Yes, I can.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes,
so
I can
let me
hear
get-
you. Yes.
You can hear me? Okay, great. What is your position on a lot of the pastors and black pastors supporting what the group did and supporting what Don
Right.
Lemon did?
Well, they're just being hypocritical, and let's call it for what it is. As I said, suppose some anti-Christian group, the Hebrew Israelites, marched up in their church and disrupted their church and called them false teachers, misleading black people, and pulled them down out of the pulpit and disrupted their service. What would their response be? And so, again, it's almost a juvenile instinct in some of these people because they feel they're justified because they don't like what job this man. But once we start down that road, anyone that doesn't like what you're preaching, anyone that doesn't like a member in your church would be justified for coming in and disrupting your worship service. I mean, there's no intelligent rationale behind this. It's an irrational hatred of Trump. And unfortunately, too many black people are following what I consider godless leftists. A left care nothing about God. They don't believe in God. And so it's nothing for them to desecrate a church. Well, suppose some right-wing group went into one of their leftist meetings with billy clubs and whipped their backside, disrupted their meeting. What would their view be? Somebody who said, we don't want you in America promoting communism and socialism in this capitalist country of ours. So, once you begin to turn the scenario around, you realize that there's no justification for this. There's no justification whatsoever.
Now, brother, this is my argument here, and this case is going to be very interesting. It's almost to say that when I watch some of the shows, to say the First Amendment, the free speech, is kind of outweighing, the right to pray and the right to go to religious service. I mean, it's just, to me, it's just political and crazy Yeah, we are even
it is
having this
crazy.
conversation.
It is crazy because, first of all, the right to protest, okay, which of course we all have a right to protest, but we also have a right to assemble. My freedom of speech and my freedoms cannot infringe upon your freedoms. Okay, my freedom of speech or my constitutional freedoms cannot deny you. So it's fallacious logic to say that because I have the right to protest, I can stop you from meeting. I can disrupt your right to assemble or your right to worship. So it's foolish. Now, the other thing they're doing, and it's a bastardization of history. It's an unfortunate bastardization of history because
I know what you're gonna say.
they want to. I've heard many. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Can you all
Yes.
hear? Okay. So I've heard many people say, well, the civil rights movement, Martin Luther King. Well, again, I challenge you. Show me one time when Martin Luther King disrupted a worship service.
Mm-hmm.
Show me one time where the civil rights, they sat in lunch counters. They sat in the middle of the street. They attempted to ride the buses. But show me where John Lewis, Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth, Reverend Ralph David Abernathy, Coretta Scott King, Fannie Lou Hamer, Ella Baker, Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture. Show me where he ever disrupted a church. And he was an atheist.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So I have a question. So
Sure.
historically, churches were central for protest movements. Historically, we all know that. So what do you feel changed from then till now?
Freedom, the fact that the church and the God we serve gave black people more freedom, and like most people, when the foot is on your neck, you turn to God.
Mm-hmm.
But when you get $2 or $3 over the rent and utility money and a hair weave and a brand new Mercedes, you don't need God anymore.
Exactly.
And so all of the institutions that brought us thus far along the way,
Mm-hmm.
in our freedom, instead of saying these institutions are the linchpin for our success, were it not for the NAACP, were it not for the Black Church, the Nation of Islam, SCLC, we've got to support these institutions because this is how we got here. But no,
Right.
with black folks, the minute we could go to white hotels, we stopped going to black hotels. And so it's our own ignorance. And it's, the Bible talks about how God loved Israel. But the minute God brought Israel out of bondage, Israel began to whore with strange gods. And that's what we've done. We have become an increasingly secular people. There was in fact, a year ago, you couldn't have gotten black folks to go into a church and disrupt it. But I'm telling you, one of the greatest cancers in the black thinking and psyche right now is MSNBC or MS Now. No, I'm serious. It is a left wing station funded by an anarchist, and that whole left wing movement is funded by a godless anarchist. And unfortunately, black people are being fed a steady diet of this. Now, the issue between Trump and the Democrats is two groups of white people fighting for power.
There you go.
Liberal whites and Trump and his people.
Exactly.
And black folks don't radically fare differently no matter who's in office.
There you
And
go.
But fine, if you like Democrats and you get more contracts under the Democrats, then that's fine. I understand that. If a person gets more contracts under the Republicans, in other words, that's just politics. But when you start losing your moral and ethic framework where you don't even see the church or the mosque or the synagogue or religious people as somebody that I mean, out of all the places, okay, they say, well, ICE is doing this and that. Okay, well, there are people who work for ICE that also go to discos and clubs. Go disrupt the club. I'm
Right.
sure there are guys that work for ICE that are also bouncers at strip clubs. Go disrespect the strip club and disrupt that. Why the church? Because the more and more black people lean toward the left, the more and more the left has to divorce us from the church and from religion. Because in the left-wing ideology, socialism, communism, there is no room for God because the state is God. And that's why they talk about free this, free that, because the state is the benefactor. The state is the giver. Remember, Karl Marx said religion is the opium of the masses. Fidel Castro did not allow religion to be practiced in Cuba. And so black people need to wake up. They are not following Martin Luther King. That's the irony of it. These black pastors that you're talking about, they're not following Dr. King because Dr. King never did that. So you can't be following Dr. King because out of all the oppression he faced, if that was an effective or moral strategy, don't you think he would have done that?
Right.
So that's where I am on this.
So I have one more thing to say. You spoke about the
Sure.
silence of faith leaders, right? And to
Sure.
me, that seems like it's a moral position. And these are people who are supposed to mentorship. It's mentorship to the community, right? To give you that clarity. So if these faith leaders are so morally comfortable being silenced, what information or what kind of resource can we give the community to gain moral clarity?
Well, I will say this, that each person has to really have their own sense of ethics. Because in a real sense, this is not a political thing. Most people listening to the sound of my voice, their mother and father and grandmother would have taught them, you don't go disrupt a worship service. And the Bible tells us in Timothy, 2 Timothy, I think it is, that the day would come where you would not be able to find a teacher that would preach a sound doctrine. And many of these ministers want to be liked. You have to understand a disproportionate number of them coming out of these seminaries. They want the grant money, the foundation money, and they have been increasingly taught by godless seminary professors who have had one agenda, and that is a left-wing agenda. And so these ministers know that if they don't embrace the progressive ideology, they'll never be invited to preach at the Capitol. They'll never be invited to get awards. They'll never be on television shows. And so many of these men are compromising their principles, and women. And also, let's be honest, and I hate to put it like this, but I am. Don Lemon is an attention whore. And unfortunately, many of these ministers have become attention whores.
Exactly.
When you hear ministers talking about their church is going to start selling weed, or their wife will wear a dress that becomes the topic of conversation about the appropriateness of it or not. These people are trying to get likes. They're trying to get clicks. They have abandoned the mission, the ethical mission, and so there's a lot of that going on as well. And they want to be popular. It's easy, it's easy to take the position that Don Lemon is a victim. It's very hard to say Don Lemon is wrong.
Now they're making him a martyr for black journalism.
And Don Lemon is no more concerned about black folks than a man on the moon.
Exactly. Exactly. So you know, Brother Conrad, you've been in a lot of these organizations, so you see how these organizations now is making Don Lemon a martyr for Black journalism. They say now, you know, they're coming for us. You know, this is the moment that they're making a move on us. What do you think about
Right.
that, brother?
I think it's pure unfettered, unmitigated foolishness. You know, when people start, I've gotten to the point where when somebody say they are coming after me, I want to know who is the they. Don Lemon knew what he was doing. Don Lemon is an independent journalist, and basically he's doing the same thing you do. He's a podcaster, okay? And he knows that this will get him likes. Last night, he was not in Harlem, or he was not in some, battered women's shelter with Sister So-and-so. He was in Hollywood being feted by Clive Davis, the man who they said had a party over Whitney Houston's dead body. Okay?
Exactly.
The man who they say taught Diddy and all these people how to molest artists and so forth and so on. So, I mean, let's face it. Let's just be clear and be honest what Don Lemon is about. Okay? And so he was not first rule of a journalist is that you never make yourself the story. Okay? Because the story is not about you. You're covering the story. You are not to become the story. That's journalistic ethics. Don Lemon conspired with these people. He organized with them. He was giving out donuts and coffee prior. They have the footage.
Exactly.
Now, let me ask you a question. He said, I'm just there to cover the story. Trying to interview the pastor in the middle of his church being disrupted. So let me ask you this question. If he was just there as a reporter, okay? He was just there covering the story. I have nothing to do with it. I knew about it. If you had to know about it, you wouldn't be there. But suppose a church shooter had told him at 2:00, I'm going to shoot up this church. Would people accept him saying, I was just there as a journalist?
No,
Exactly.
not
He
at
would
all.
be a conspirator, right?
Yeah,
He
absolutely.
knew it was going to happen. He came because it was going to happen. And that's the same thing that happened with this protest. Okay? And though a church shooting is vastly different than church disruption in terms of Don Lemon's culpability, it's all the same. In other words, if he just happened to be in church and this happened and he jumped into his journalistic bag and started covering it, that's one thing. But this was not his church. He knew that it was going to. But the other thing is this. I'm so sick and tired of people quoting Martin Luther King. One of the principles of the civil rights movement was we believe that the laws are unjust, but we recognize that this is the law. But because we believe the law is unjust, we will peacefully and in a non-belligerent way violate the law. Rosa Parks didn't jump up and turn the mother out on the bus, right? She just sat there. The other thing in the movement was, and this was part of the training, part of the discipline and the ethics, when you broke the law, you expected to go to jail. That was the point. In other words, I want to go to jail. I want to offer my body as a sacrifice because I'm a moral warrior. And this law that says that black people have to sit on the back of the bus is wrong. And I know it's wrong, and I'm willing to go to jail, and I'll sit in jail until these laws are changed. And of course, throughout the movement, they filled up the jails. Dr. King,
Mm-hmm.
Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture was arrested over 77 times in Alabama and Mississippi. Dr. King was sentenced to long prison sentences, sometimes as long as 6 months. And so if Don Lemon, if he's sincere, and these people, I heard a woman say it was 4 of them that planned it. If they're that serious about it, then they should be willing to go to jail. And don't cry now. You did it. Don't say it's unjust. You made the decision as a conscientious objector to go in and disrupt someone's church. At least you could have the ethical decency to pay the price.
Mm-hmm.
I respect you if you did that. When Muhammad Ali gave up his belt, said, I'm not going to Vietnam. They offered him, you don't have to fight, just do exhibitions. He said, no, because if I go, I'm inspiring someone else to go. He said, no, I'd rather just go to jail.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Brother, where do you think do you think there's an end? Because it's not, I mean, because if the Dems get in, it's just going to be trying to impeach Trump for the next 2 years. You know, it's not even going to be, you know, and then we're going to just end at the bottom again, even after all this stuff. Like, we'll get nothing from it.
It will. And, you know, America, we're coming up on our 250th year as a nation. Now, I will tell you that no nation in the world has ever risen to our height in only 250 years. Okay, you can go to Paris or London or Heidelberg, Germany, and there are buildings that are 1,700 years old. Okay, 1,700 years old.
Mm-hmm.
You can go to ancient Egypt. You can go to Egypt. You can go to Abyssinia. You can go to ancient China. And there are buildings there in 2,000, 3,000 years old in different parts of the world. But in only 250 years, America has become, arguably in terms of ethics, but certainly not arguably in terms of power, the most powerful nation on the earth. But what has kept us powerful is several things. Number one, I give great credit to the founders of the founding fathers. Now, they were racist, slave owners, but they created a system, a political system that the world had never seen before. See, what people don't understand is under every other nation on the earth, and we talk about the great Songhai, Mali, Timbuktu, great ancient Egypt, China, true, ancient Persia, all those countries, ancient Europe, Roman Empire, they were all great. But the individual didn't mean a damn thing in those societies.
Mm-hmm.
You were a subject of the sovereign, the king, the ruler. There were no individual liberties. There were no middle class people, okay? When I hear these socialists talk about capitalism, why capitalism makes people impoverished, it's asinine. Poverty is the normal default of human beings.
Mm-hmm.
From the cavemen to from the hunters and gatherers, when we first start cultivating society, most people who hunted didn't catch anything on that day. Most times crops did not bear fruit. Throughout the dark ages and middle ages, people have lived in poverty, but it is capitalism and America that's produced a middle class. But the only way we did that is through our political institutions. And I'm afraid that the people now in office are small-minded people. You know, when I see Democrats now, Damon, and I put it more on the Democrats at this point in this regard. They say they're for the masses. But my point is, when you see people making fiery speeches in the Congress, and basically they're anti-Trump speeches or they're anti-Republican speeches, who's going to do the legislation? Adam Clayton Powell was elected in 1947 or in the late 40s, early 50s. I forget whether he was, I know he was in the city council by 47. But he got to Washington, he couldn't even eat in the dining room. It was a segregated dining room. He had segregationists, Dixiecrats. They were Democrats and segregationists. He had to deal with them every day. And yet, Adam Clayton Powell got 66 bills passed during his tenure in Congress. What is Jasmine Crockett doing for us other than cosplaying? What is Hakeem Jeffries doing? What legislation are they passing? See, if you're not passing legislation, you won't have any value to people if you're elected to Congress. You go there to get things done. I can go on 125th Street and hear somebody talking crazy.
Right. I mean, it got to the point that this type of politics, whether it's local, state, or national, they don't want to work with the other side for some reason. Like, it just doesn't.
It's because the left has a disproportionate influence. And the left, when I say the left, I mean those people who are socialists and communists that do not like the American way of life. Heretofore, in the black community, every leader we've had an appreciation for the American way of life. They simply pointed out to America that America denied us an opportunity to participate in the American way of life. These people do not like the American way of life, and they want to undermine it. And that's why everything has to be bitter and rancorous. And that's why you can't get anything done in the Congress, because in order to do things in the Congress, there has to be, number one, civility, cordiality, and everybody has to be, even though they have differences, everybody has to think about the good of the citizens and the people.
Right.
And
Well,
so,
brother,
I mean, yeah, I go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, man. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, there's a pox on both houses. I know people think I talk more about the Democrats. Are enslaved to the Democrats. So if I'm going to work on freeing my people, there's no sense in me wasting time talking about Trump. They don't like him anyway. But they are enslaved to the Democrats. And they have literally presented politics as though it's a moral struggle between the good side, the responsible side, and the evil side. When, in fact, both parties are men and women interested in one thing: who's going to control the gavel and who's going to sit in the White House or the State House. That's what it's all about.
Hey, brother, I got a question for you. Someone says, what do you think about how many of those same leaders were also called communists and socialists?
No, they weren't. Ask your person to tell me which one. Ask your person to tell me which one. Yeah, they were. They may have been called communists or socialists, but these today say they're communists and socialists. J. Edgar Hoover called Martin Luther King. J. Edgar Hoover called Martin Luther King a communist. I never heard Dr. King say he was a communist.
Right. Absolutely.
And Paul Robeson and Du Bois. Paul Robeson. You know, listen. In the 1930s, when black people are living in legal segregation, people are being lynched in 1918, I don't fault any black leader for exploring communism, socialism, Bolshevism, the Bolshevik Revolution, had only taken place in 1908. Communism purported to be for the oppressed. So when you're in a state of oppression, the way black people were in that era, I don't blame them for being interested in communism or believing that it might be a solution. The communists are very clear. They always want to exploit the weaknesses of the capitalist system, and racism
Right.
and segregation was a weakness. But what happened? Paul Robeson became intrigued and became a communist, but he didn't die one. He became very, 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 very discouraged when he saw that, you know, the totalitarian nature. One of his best friends was killed in Russia. And he saw W.E.B. Du Bois. He saw the racism of the left, the progressive left, and he left and died in Africa. The only person that I know in the black community that died a socialist is Kwame Ture. And Kwame Ture was always very clear that he was an African socialist. He rejected European socialism. And so, no, this is a myth that the left, now I've heard him say Dr. King was a socialist, Malcolm was a socialist. You know, I mean, they are bastardizing history. And because we don't know history, we are falling for it.
That's right. Hey, Brother Con, I got another question. Who is going to unite the two houses if the Dems gain control? Schumer or Jeffries? I don't think so.
Who are Jeffries?
Schumer or Jeffries?
Well, first of all, neither one of them will be able to do it because, you see, here's the problem with America. You cannot have a partisan politician. And when you reduce yourself to become a partisan hack for the Republicans or the Democrats, you'll never rise above the rancor. Let me just remind people that Democrats have the history of Democrats since I've been alive, and I'm 61 years old. John F. Kennedy was a Democrat that today would not even be allowed in the Democratic Party, okay? But when he was killed in 63, Lyndon Johnson won in 64, okay? He replaced him, finished out his term, and he won his own term in 64. But after Johnson's term, you did not have a Democratic president again from 68 when Nixon won again to 1976 when Carter won, and he only won because of Watergate. But after Carter won, you did not have another Democrat win from 1980 to 1992. And the only way Bill Clinton won in 92 was that he was a conservative Democrat. He was not a partisan Democrat. He was a conservative Democrat, and he worked with Newt Gingrich in order to get things done. And so the transformative figures in American history, they understand that, first of all, we have a bicameral house. You can't get anything done with one party. Right. Statesmen have to be able to reach against the aisle and find common ground. That's what New York. See, a New York politician will never be a transformative figure in America because the left has so dominated the New York political landscape. The ideas that you have to have in order to be popular in New York, they will never fly in some other parts of the country.
Right.
So you never, because New York does not have moderate Democrats, and it's only Democrats only win when they're moderates, and Joe Biden only won because people perceived him coming after Trump. He was perceived as an old white man, a moderate Democrat that would pull us back to the center. and unfortunately, Hakeem has allowed himself to be pulled to the left, and of course Schumer, he's trying to fight, he and Hakeem, but their problem is they think that if they just put their head in the sand, the socialists will go away and leave them alone. They should be fighting the socialists.
But I mean, it's just swaying that way in New York, man. It's something that they're gonna have to show and prove, and Dammy's gonna have to show and prove. And
well,
you're gonna make a choice after that, brother. No, people are gonna have to make a choice.
Well,
they're gonna have to see the outcome.
I already know what's gonna happen. What's gonna happen is the same thing that happened in the mid '70s. New York, was dominated by free spending Democrats and a free spending Republican governor. The whole concept and term Rockefeller Republican is a term that captures who Nelson Rockefeller was, a free spending liberal Republican. Okay, Republican in name only. They call them rhinos. Country club Republican. Was not a fiscal conservative. New York, welfare benefits, free this, free that. By 1975, the city of New York went broke. Bad policies in terms of real estate, bad policies in terms of the private sector, and the businesses left. And the building owners walked away from the buildings because they couldn't collect rent money, because the legislature had made it almost impossible for people to collect rent money. They walked away from those buildings, paid some kid $50 and had them burned down.
Mm-hmm.
And by 1976, the city was in Washington begging, 75, begging to be rescued. And it wasn't until, to be honest with you, the sad thing is New York's greatest days in the last 50 years have come under 5 Republican terms, 2 under Giuliani and 3 under Bloomberg.
Yeah, unfortunately.
I mean, it's sad, but it's true. Dinkins was trying. He was fairly moderate, but the city was in such bad shape by the time he got it, and he only got that 1 term. And,
right.
But let's face it. I mean, that's the problem with gentrification, that all of these people that have moved to New York, they only did so after the conservative fiscal policies and the tough law and order policies of people like Giuliani and Bloomberg and Ray Kelly. And as much as we protested and didn't like some of the things that went on, what's that? Yeah, I mean,
exactly. We was out there protesting all them dudes, man.
I mean, because it was excess, and of course, when a man is coming home from work and he's shot 41 times when he barely has a wallet, I mean, we had to be out there. But the broken windows theory, it turned out to be a good way of policing.
In theory.
Well, I'm not as knowledgeable about that as you.
in theory, but
in theory.
Right. It depends on what precinct and who is your commander.
Yeah, that's what it is.
How that theory work, and the same as stop and frisk. I mean, stop and frisk is just it's just called the Constitution, or the Supreme Court calls it the Terry stop. Any cop can do a Terry stop. But if you target a certain group of people to do it consistently, it becomes stop and frisk.
And quotas. And I think quotas is also an incentive for that system to be misused and utilized in the wrong way.
I didn't like, and I talked to AJ about it because I watched some of these lawyers and entertainers on BET, and then I watched some other, scaring black people, and it's sad though, because when you say oh, well, Trump's going to bring back stop and frisk. And I'm like, yo, stop and frisk ain't never left. It's called a
Right.
carry stop by the Constitution. Trump's
Right.
going to bring back qualified immunity. Qualified immunity is from the Supreme Court too.
You have to have
It's
qualified
already
immunity.
there. It's already there. So
Who would ever take a job? Yeah, I mean, who would take a job as a police officer, EMS technician, firefighter? Who would take that job without qualified immunity? I mean, qualified immunity just means that, hey, if my mother's not breathing and I call an ambulance and the first responders get there and they apply CPR and my mother doesn't make it, I can't sue them because they killed my mother. They have some immunity because their duty is inherently dangerous and comes with great risk. It's the same with a police officer. Now, qualified immunity is different than what this idiot, and I do think he's a fascist, Stephen Miller, he has fascist tendencies, saying that people had complete immunity. No one has the Gestapo, okay?
Right.
Where they can summarily execute you. No one has, but you have to have qualified immunity because if a police officer breaks your arm and you're a criminal, you just killed 10 people, you shouldn't be able to sue a police officer.
Well, I think more people were talking about in cases of questionable police shootings and police brutality that leads into death. I mean, the problem with all that is just our elected officials are not passing, the correct laws. As an organization, we used to tell them, like, if they violated, you could do a state policy that if they violated the department's policies and procedures and training, then they could lose there. If you
but see, that's the limits. Right. That's the limits of now. If you show up at an EMS if you're working as an EMS worker, you show up at someone's house on a call, and you high on crack, and the person dies as a result of that, that you would lose that immunity because you did not use best practices. That's not a person dying in the course of your duty. You were grossly incompetent. You were, so if a police officer could be proved to have, not operated within his training or her training, then yes, that's where that's what the term qualified immunity means. Qualified, you have it as long as you follow best practices. And I'm happy, to be honest with you, because in the last 30 years, people forget that the first man ever convicted in New York State for abuse against a black citizen was Justin Volpe. And that wasn't until 1993, sodomizing Abner women. No police officer had ever been charged with murder of a black citizen prior to 1993, and that sodomizing of Abner women. But nowadays, I think, Derek Chauvin and some of these other cases, the laws are changing. But like you said, the legislators have to create better laws. You want to be fair, obviously, to law enforcement or any first responder, because how will you get people to take those jobs if they have inherent risk? Let's be fair. It's like a school teacher. I mean, a school teacher has, certain protections. A swimming instructor. I mean, you could drown. You know what I mean? And so we have to, use common sense. That's all.
Well, brother, man, I thank you for coming on. We are at that time.
Yes, sir.
Well, I appreciate it.
Larnez, AJ.
Good show. Thank you for coming, my brother.
I haven't heard a peep out of AJ the whole time.
We talking right now. You talking right now. You just can't
You
hear.
couldn't hear me. You couldn't hear me, so I let
All
David
right.
take over.
I like hearing brother AJ.
Yeah, you couldn't hear me, so I let
Hey,
David take
brother,
over.
let them know if they want to know where your church at, man. Anybody watching, let them know where they can come hear you get the word of God, man.
Yeah, please, you know, they certainly are the Congregational Church of South Hempstead, Long Island. I've only been there since May, so it's my latest church assignment, and I'm very happy out there. But also they can, Conrad Tillard on Facebook, Conversations with Conrad on YouTube. They can find me on Twitter. I'm all over the internet, but reach out, stay plugged in, and you know, you all continue to do the great work you're doing. I appreciate you standing up for the brother in Mount Vernon. That's a great tragedy and travesty. And, you know, one of the things that I would say to Black elected officials, Black leaders, Black preachers, and Black people, you know, I am so sick and tired of hearing they don't want us or they are trying to do to us. Now, you are pointing out a situation where there's a Black city of 70,000 people, and we can't get that right. So if we would just focus on ourselves, I don't hear any other race. And I know there was a time when that was a relevant conversation, but I don't see any great conspiracy today to keep Blacks down. But what I see are a divided people that are constantly looking for a boogeyman rather than rolling up our sleeves and looking ourselves in the mirror and saying we could do better than we're doing.
That's it, brother. That's it. Thank you, man. I appreciate
my
you.
brother. Be blessed.
We're gonna let you get back to the driving, man.
All right. Have a good evening.
Peace now.
All right, peace.
Yeah, when he couldn't hear me,
We give your business unmatched exposure. From email blasts straight to our subscribers, to video commercials, website promotions, and targeted campaigns, we've got the tools to help you connect, engage, and grow. Whether you're a local business, a national brand, a rising entrepreneur, or just promoting an upcoming event, Black Westchester is where culture, community, and commerce meet. Contact us today or scan the QR code and start building with us. Rep the movement. Get your official Black Westchester merch today. Hoodies, tees, and more at blackwestchestermerch.shop. Wear your voice, make a statement. Damon K. Jones exposes the lies and challenges the gatekeepers in Black politics in his powerful book, Emotional Politics and Logical Failure. Black America needs fewer emotions and more outcomes. Our communities deserve better. On sale now, get the book or audiobook on Amazon, From the Streets of Westchester to the Heart of Hip Hop. Discover A. J. Woodson's powerful collection. Black Westchester, the origin story. We got our own thing. Hip hop from the 9, 1, 4, and Black Westchester celebrate Black women of Westchester. Available now at blackwestchester.com and on Amazon. Get your copies today. Tolerance is for Cowards by Damon K. Jones. This book is not anti-police, it's pro-community. Discover how the extended policing strategy empowers you to demand real public safety, justice, and accountability from your local police department. Because the Black community deserves good policing. This Valentine's Day, make it sweet with Cupcake Cutie Boutique. They're serving fresh, hand-dipped chocolate-covered strawberries, perfect for date night, gifts, or a treat for yourself. For a limited time, order through DoorDash, Uber Eats, or Grubhub, and get 20% off our chocolate-covered strawberries. Love should taste this good. Thank you for watching another Blacktastic episode of the People Before Politics show. Sunday Rundown, powered by Black Westchester Magazine. We appreciate every single one of you who tuned in, commented, shared the stream, and joined the conversation. Your support is the reason independent Black media continues to thrive and speak truth without fear. Every week, we show up to bring clarity, accountability, and real community insight to the stories that matter. And you show up with us. Whether you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, or X, we want you to know that your voice, your engagement, and your presence make this platform stronger. Thank you for rocking with Damon K. Jones, AJ Woodson, and Larnez Kinsey as we break down the issues that many outlets ignore. And thank you for supporting a space where Black thought, Black leadership, and Black truth-telling still matter.